Your mind is the command center of your life. Every decision, every emotion, every habit, you name it, it all begins with a single thought. We often underestimate just how much power our minds hold. We think life happens to us, but in reality, most of life happens through us. And the way we interpret, react, and shape our experiences all starts in the mind. You can have all the talent, all the opportunity, all the resources, but if your mind isn't in alignment, none of it matters. That's why people with less talent and fewer resources often surpass those who are given everything, because they controlled the one thing that matters most, their mindset. Think about how you wake up in the morning. If the first thought you have is, I'm already behind, how do you think your day is going to go? You'll rush through everything, you'll make reactive decisions, you'll carry stress like a weight on your back. But if you woke up and your first thought was, today I lead, everything shifts, same tasks, same meetings, same challenges, but a different mind, which means a different life, that's the thing most people don't understand. They try to change their circumstances, their jobs, their relationships, hoping the external changes will fix the internal chaos, but that never works. Why? Because the external is a reflection of the internal. If you want real, lasting change, you start with the root. You start with your thoughts, the way you speak to yourself when nobody's listening, the way you interpret failure, the beliefs you hold when things go wrong. That's the command center, and if it's broken or neglected, you'll always feel like you're chasing clarity, chasing peace, chasing purpose. But here's the truth, you're not stuck because you don't know what to do. You're stuck because your mind is running an outdated program. It's running fear, insecurity, self-doubt, and you haven't taken control of it. You haven't stopped to ask, who's really running the show here, me or my fear? Because if your mind is filled with fear, you'll make decisions from fear. If your mind is filled with clarity, you'll make decisions from power. That's why mindset is everything. You're not just thinking your way through life, you're building your life one thought at a time. Most people live in reaction mode. Something happens and they react. They get an email and their emotions shift. They hear a rumor and their confidence drops. It's like living with your finger on the panic button all the time. And the worst part, they think that's normal. They think that's just how life is, but it's not. You can retrain your mind to respond instead of react. You can create space between stimulus and response. You can build a mindset that doesn't flinch every time something doesn't go your way. That's what mental control looks like. When you own your thoughts, you own your outcomes. You don't rely on motivation. You create momentum through intentional focus. You don't wait for things to feel easier. You raise your standards and strengthen your resolve. That's how leaders operate. That's how high performers think. They don't hope their mindset will carry them. They build a mindset that does. And here's what's powerful. Your mind will believe whatever you tell it most often. Tell it you're not good enough, and it will find evidence to support that. Tell it you are capable, disciplined, and resilient, and it will find ways to make that true. Your thoughts become filters. They determine what you see, how you interpret it, and what actions you take next. So if you don't like your life, don't just change your schedule. Don't just change your goals. Change the way you think, rewire the command center, audit the stories you've been telling yourself. Are they serving your growth or stunting it? Are they aligned with your potential or anchored to your past? The truth is, you can't lead your life from a reactive, chaotic mindset. But the moment you take control of your thoughts, everything begins to shift. You stop chasing validation. You stop avoiding hard things. You step into ownership, and when you own your mind, you own your future, because the mind, when trained, is the most powerful tool you have, and when left untrained, it becomes your biggest enemy. Either way, it's running the show. So if you're ready to change your life, start where it really begins, inside your own mind. Most people go through life unaware. They wake up, go through their routines, face obstacles, and react the same way every time without ever stopping to ask why. Why they feel stuck, why they keep repeating the same mistakes, why their goals never seem to turn into outcomes. But here's the truth. Nothing in your life can truly change until you become aware. Awareness is the starting point of every breakthrough. It's the moment you finally stop blaming everything and everyone else and start asking hard questions. It's not comfortable, it's not flashy, but it's powerful. Because once you become aware of what's actually going on inside your thoughts, inside your emotions, inside your patterns, you gain the opportunity to do something about it. You can't change what you're not aware of. You can't fix a pattern you don't even know you're repeating, and you definitely can't grow if you keep telling yourself a story that doesn't reflect the truth. Most people want results without reflection. They want success without self-awareness. They want progress without asking, where am I holding myself back? But that's not how transformation works. Real growth begins with owning where you are, not just dreaming about where you want to go. Awareness is not just recognizing what you're doing wrong, it's understanding why. It's noticing the automatic thoughts that run your day, the hesitation when it's time to speak up, the anxiety that comes right before you take a risk. It's becoming a quiet observer of your inner world. You begin to track your triggers. You start noticing the gap between your potential and your behavior, and instead of shaming yourself for that gap, you use it as information. You use it as fuel. You use it as a map. Once you have awareness, you gain choice. That's the magic of it. You no longer default to the same patterns. You don't have to yell just because you're frustrated. You don't have to shrink just because you're intimidated. You don't have to stop just because it feels hard. You now have the power to pause and choose a different response. And every time you make that conscious choice, you rewire your brain. You train it to work for you, not against you. But let's be clear, awareness takes courage, because when you become aware, you can't unsee the truth. You'll realize that some of your beliefs were never yours to begin with. That some of your fears are outdated, that some of your behaviors are rooted in insecurity, that the version of you you've been protecting is actually the one holding you back, and that's hard, but it's also liberating. Because now you're no longer pretending, you're no longer numbing, you're finally seeing things for what they are, and from there, you can build something better. Opportunity shows up the moment you see clearly. The moment you say, this is what I've been avoiding, that's when new doors open, new strategies, new decisions, new levels of leadership and impact, because when you see yourself honestly, you can lead yourself honestly. And people respond to that, life responds to that, alignment happens when your inner world matches your outer world, and awareness is the bridge, so if you feel stuck, don't start with action, start with attention. Pay attention to your reactions, your energy, the words you speak out loud and the ones you whisper to yourself. Pay attention to what drains you, excites you, challenges you. Don't judge it, just notice it. Because that's how change begins. Awareness doesn't always feel productive, but it's the foundation for everything that is. You can't grow beyond your level of self-awareness. You'll always sabotage or settle if you don't understand your own programming. But the second you bring the unconscious into the conscious, that's when everything changes. That's when you stop reacting and start leading. So if you want a new level in life, more freedom, more clarity, more success, it starts here. With radical awareness, with telling the truth to yourself, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable, because awareness isn't just knowing who you are. It's about recognizing who you could be if you stopped getting in your own way. That's the opportunity, and that's where your power lies. Motivation feels good, but it's unreliable. It's that spark you feel when you watch an inspiring video, hear a great speaker, or set a new goal. But sparks don't last, they burn out, and if your success is built on those fleeting bursts of energy, you're never going to get where you want to go. Discipline, on the other hand, is what carries you through when motivation disappears. Discipline is the quiet commitment to show up even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it, because that's when it matters most. People often wait until they feel ready to act. They wait for the perfect moment, the perfect mindset, the perfect environment, but waiting is the enemy of progress. If you only work when you're motivated, you'll be inconsistent. If you're inconsistent, your results will reflect that. But discipline creates momentum, and momentum creates motivation. Most people get that backward. They think they need motivation first in order to be disciplined. But the truth is, if you develop discipline, motivation will eventually catch up. Discipline means showing up early when no one's watching. It means doing the reps when you're tired, finishing the task when it's boring, and following through when no one's clapping. It means you've decided that your goals are not optional, and neither are your efforts. That's not glamorous, it's not exciting, but it's what separates people who talk about their dreams from people who actually live them. Discipline is what builds trust with yourself. Every time you do the thing you said you'd do, even when it's uncomfortable, you strengthen your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who starts and stops, and you become someone who finishes. There will be days you don't feel like getting out of bed, days when self-doubt is louder than your vision, days when no one is encouraging you, validating you, or recognizing your efforts. Discipline doesn't care. Discipline steps in and says, "We're doing it anyway." It silences the excuses, it drowns out the noise. Because discipline is rooted in decision, not emotion, you don't negotiate with your goals every morning. You've already decided who you are and what you're committed to, and that decision guides your actions. Motivation makes you feel good temporarily. Discipline builds character permanently. And if you want to live a life that's bigger than your feelings, you have to be led by something deeper than a mood. Feelings fluctuate. One day you're inspired, the next day you're anxious, but discipline isn't based on your current emotional weather, it's built on clarity. Clarity about who you are, what you want, and what it takes to get there. High performers don't rely on willpower, they rely on systems. They create routines and guardrails that support their discipline. They design their environment to match their goals. They build habits that make doing the right thing automatic. Because they know that depending on motivation is a trap. It's how you burn out. It's how you become inconsistent. But when you build discipline into your daily structure, success becomes less about inspiration and more about repetition. Here's what's powerful. Discipline is learnable. It's not about being naturally self-controlled or born different. It's about making small decisions daily that reinforce the version of yourself you want to become. Discipline isn't this giant act of sacrifice, it's the steady refusal to quit on yourself. You do it once, then you do it again, and then it becomes who you are. And don't confuse discipline with perfection. You will mess up, you will miss days, you will fall short. Discipline isn't about never failing, it's about returning faster. It's about getting back on track without drama, without spiraling. It's knowing that one setback doesn't erase your progress, and it definitely doesn't erase your identity. So the next time you don't feel motivated, don't panic, don't wait, show up anyway, do what's required, not what's comfortable. That's where the transformation happens. That's when you realize your future doesn't depend on how excited you are. It depends on how committed you are. Motivation starts the race, discipline finishes it, and in the long game of life, finishing is what counts. What you focus on, you feed, and what you feed grows. This is one of the most powerful principles in life, yet most people walk through their day completely unaware of how much control they actually have over what they attract. The mind is like a filter. You see the world not as it is, but as you are. If your mind is tuned to scarcity, fear, and limitation, that's exactly what you'll notice everywhere. But if your mind is trained to look for possibility, progress, and opportunity, you'll start to see paths where others see problems. Focus is like a magnet. Whatever you consistently give your energy, attention, and belief to will begin to show up more in your life. That's not magic, it's mindset. Because when you lock your focus onto a goal or belief, your brain starts working behind the scenes to reinforce that focus. You start spotting patterns, noticing connections, filtering distractions, and taking actions that align with the thing you're mentally dialed into. Your focus shapes your perception, and your perception influences your actions. That's how your thoughts become your reality. Think about it this way. Two people can experience the same challenge and walk away with completely different outcomes. One sees failure, the other sees a lesson. One sees rejection, the other sees redirection. The difference isn't in the situation, it's in the focus. What are you choosing to see? What story are you choosing to tell yourself? Because your story becomes your strategy. And if your story is built around blame, doubt, or excuses, don't be surprised when your life mirrors those same patterns. Most people don't realize they're focusing on the wrong things. They obsess over what they can't control, what might go wrong, or what they haven't done yet. That kind of focus doesn't produce solutions, it produces stress, and when you constantly live in a problem-focused mindset, even progress starts to feel like a threat. You become blind to your wins, your growth, your potential. Not because they aren't there, but because you're not looking for them. On the other hand, when you train your focus on what you can control, your habits, your mindset, your effort, you begin to reclaim your power. You start seeing what's within reach. You begin to take back ownership over your outcomes, and that ownership creates clarity. Suddenly, you're not overwhelmed by everything you can't fix. You're energized by everything you can influence. This shift doesn't happen by accident. It requires discipline. You have to decide every day what kind of energy you're going to feed. You have to shut down the thoughts that pull you backward and redirect your attention to the ones that move you forward. And that means catching yourself in the moment. It means asking, is this thought helping or hurting me? Is this conversation productive or poisonous? Is this focus aligned with where I want to go? If you want a different life, you have to train your focus like an athlete trains a skill. You get intentional, you set targets, you eliminate distractions, you protect your mental energy like it's your most valuable resource. Because it is. Where your focus goes, your future follows. It's not about pretending everything is perfect or ignoring your problems. It's about refusing to let your problems become your identity. It's about holding space for struggle while still choosing to focus on solutions. This is the difference between surviving and thriving. Survivors focus on what's happening to them. Leaders focus on what they're building in spite of it. You attract what you focus on, not just in mindset, but in momentum. The more you focus on what's working, the more action you take. The more action you take, the more results you create. That cycle becomes a feedback loop. You start to believe in yourself, and belief creates behavior. Behavior shapes identity, and identity fuels transformation. So take inventory. What are you focusing on right now? Is it aligned with your goals, or is it rooted in fear? Is your focus helping you grow or keeping you small? Because if you want to attract confidence, peace, abundance, impact, it starts with focusing on the thoughts, actions, and habits that reflect those things. Your focus is a daily decision. You don't always control your circumstances, but you always control your attention. And the life you want is already waiting for you, but it's only visible when you start looking through the right lens. Focus is the filter that makes the invisible visible. Train it well. Control isn't something you're born with, it's something you build. It's not a trait that a lucky few inherit. It's a skill that anyone can develop with enough intention, effort, and repetition. Most people believe that those who are calm under pressure, focused during chaos, or relentlessly consistent must just be wired that way. They think, I'm not like that, or I've never been disciplined, and they use that as a reason to stay stuck. But that's a myth. Control is not a gift, it's a choice, and like every real skill, it's earned through practice, not personality. At its core, control is your ability to choose your response, to hold your reaction long enough to think, to lead yourself when your emotions want to take the wheel, and that isn't a switch that flips overnight. It's a muscle you strengthen through daily decisions. Every time you pause instead of lash out, every time you stick to a routine instead of give in to distraction, every time you show up for your commitments even when it's hard, you're building control. You're shaping your mind to listen to direction instead of emotion. People who have control over their lives didn't just wake up like that. They trained for it, they failed, they overreacted, they lost focus, and then they tried again. More aware, more intentional, more equipped. The difference is they didn't give up when it got hard. They didn't label themselves as not disciplined or not focused. They decided to become the kind of person who is. That decision is where real change begins. The problem is we're conditioned to think that feelings should come first. We wait to feel motivated, confident, inspired, but control doesn't wait. Control acts in alignment with your values, not your moods. It's what allows you to keep moving when every part of you wants to stop. It's what helps you lead with vision instead of fear, and the more you use it, the stronger it gets. Developing control means taking full ownership of your internal world. It means not blaming your environment, your past, or your circumstances for your choices. It means realizing that just because something is difficult doesn't mean it's impossible. You stop outsourcing responsibility and you start taking command of your thoughts, your time, your reactions. That doesn't mean you'll always get it right. It means you keep showing up to the practice, knowing that every rep counts. The best part, control multiplies. When you develop control in one area of life, maybe it's your health, your finances, your emotional regulation, it starts to bleed into other areas. You become more grounded. You make better decisions. You communicate more clearly, you trust yourself more deeply, and that self-trust becomes the foundation for everything else. Control isn't about being rigid or emotionless. It's not about suppressing how you feel or pretending things don't bother you. It's about mastering your responses so you can move through challenges with clarity instead of chaos. It's the space between stimulus and response where you choose power over panic, and that space grows with practice. There will be days when your emotions try to hijack you, when your old habits come knocking, when everything in you says, just this once, skip it. That's when control shows up, not as some grand gesture, but as a small, quiet decision to stay aligned with who you said you want to become. That's the moment where the skill is forged, not when it's easy, but when it's inconvenient. If you want to lead, grow, and live a life that reflects your potential, you need control. Not control over others, not control over outcomes, but control over you. That's the only kind that matters, and it's the only kind you actually have full access to. So the next time you catch yourself saying, I'm just not that disciplined, or that's just not me, stop. That's not truth, that's training, and if you're willing to train differently, you can become someone different. Someone who doesn't wait for permission, who doesn't let emotions run the show, who doesn't quit when it gets uncomfortable. Because the truth is, control is a skill, and if you want it, you can build it, one choice at a time, one moment at a time, one version of yourself at a time.